Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, whatever you identify as. It's almost, yeah.
Are we on air?
Oh, we're definitely on air.
Awesome.
I'm Mr. B.
Hi, I'm Lord Marcus.
And we are here to talk to you about movies that existed in time before the year of my birth, 1988.
Which I think will serve to illuminate that there was, in fact, reality prior to your reality.
It's not confirmed yet.
Hopefully, by the end of this episode, we will be well on the path of establishing confirmation that there is indeed pre-B reality.
And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to draft these films. And we've decided 2 rounds. So with our regular 7 categories, we're going around twice. So 14 movies each, 2 rounds. And did you want to speak about it a bit? Because this has kind of become maybe a theme for this second season of wanting to talk about pre-88 films to the point of you potentially want to do multiple episodes with multiple drafts of this.
Absolutely. I am so enthusiastic about films from the past and not just talking about films that are coming out in the theater this week, where like all of everything that you might see in cinematic, social media, or newsreels, or however you consume your film news, is talking about flavor of the week. And we often ignore all these classics from the past. And I am like the first person that will say that I have been guilty of this nearly my entire life. And I want to share with people now the wonderful cinematic journey I've had in the past year of going way into the past and like to the beginning of the silent film era, to the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and then revisiting with Mr. B some of the 80s classics that he might not have had the option to see because he was busy being born late in the 80s.
I was busy existing.
Exactly. And being conceived. And I've just been really stoked about it. And there's not enough people talking about these old movies. And when, let's say, for example, if you went to RogerEbert.com and looked at his list of great movies, that's a really good resource to find older movies. But sometimes you're just like, oh, am I going to be into Hitchcock? Is it going to be too slow? Could I be into early Kubrick? I heard it wasn't very good. What about silent films? Do I have to like read subtitles? We're here to answer those questions for you, and we're here to hopefully shed some light in an entertaining way on some films that might be appealing to you when it's time to sit in front of the TV or plan your next date night out and they've got retro night at the movie theater. Hopefully, you will tune in to a Film Dogs broadcast and help yourself make those decisions much easier.
Well, yeah, we kind of decided also when talking about this season what we did want to focus on, or what did we want to be the brand of the Film Dogs. And we got into the conversation of how many movies have been made pre-1988. And the amount is so large that it would be impossible for us to watch all of those films before we inevitably leave this place. But because of social media, it became a social conversation, and we just kind of went post social media. We are people who are constantly consuming new content, and we are the MP3 world generations, or the streaming where you want to listen to that song, you can listen to that song. You don't have to own the CD. You don't need to own the vinyl, the 8-track in your car, in your Cadillac. Where we are so used to wanting to jump to what's next instead of honestly respecting and understanding what was before. And I've been around for almost 40 years, and there's a lot of stuff I don't know and a lot of movies I haven't seen. And we want to shed a light and bring some love to films that have honestly been impactful for generations and for people and for Hollywood, that it almost becomes like a dying art. And everybody wants us to talk about new stuff. We want to talk about stuff you should care about.
And even to the extent where, like, I've watched older films, and we've talked about some of those older films. Just as an example, I don't want to say an example because it might be one of our draft subjects, but there's these classics, but like it took me forever to visit some of these things that are considered by cinephiles to be the greatest films of all time.
Yeah.
You have to put yourself into a kind of zone because the type of entertainment that's being provided maybe not be on the surface level because of how films have evolved.
Yeah.
And if you're, let's say, like into the Bourne movies, then you might not be into 50s action movies because the craft has really it's evolved well, but you're missing out on all of these great the origins and the great cinematography and how they made it work in the 1950s, and the behind the scenes is just so interesting. So yeah, I'm really, and plus foreign directors that have been widely considered there would be no current cinema without some of these classic directors. So yeah, we want to give some props out to those people and sort of shed a light on what we have been currently watching. And when we have these types of recommendations, like for me, when I get recommendations, I put them in a watch list, and I've been batting like 100 for 4.5 and 5-star first watch films in 2024. Yeah. So we hope to do the same for you.
Well, and the biggie was when we decided that this would be the focus on the year, and that we would maybe want to, on earlier episodes of the season, do pre-88. I started sweating, because I have the classics that I love, but there are so many films, famous films, other classics that I have never seen. Do I go on a limb and be honest right now and talk about like Orson Welles or maybe directors like Alfred Hitchcock? I love him. I respect him now. I always respected him. It took me a while to hit play on his movies. But knowing we were doing an 88 pre-88 draft, I have to know Hitchcock, and I have to know Orson Welles, and I need to know all these other artists out there that everybody else in cinema know about and have watched. And I need to know, are these movies that I want and that I love as well?
So we're going to be drafting tonight, and as Mr. B said, we're going to be doing 2 rounds of 7 picks each.
Yeah.
The only thing that we sort of need to address is our normal standards for box office darling is 100 million at the box office. Now in the 80s, 100 mil at the box office was really extremely rare. In the 70s, it was almost unheard of. So we have amended the rule for box office darling to be, it must have been globally in the top 25 top grossing films of any said year before 1988. So anything before 1988 that's in the top 25 world box office for that year is eligible for a box office darling.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Let's do it. Should we get into it?
Let's do it. I got the randomizer app ready to go.
The randomizer.
I couldn't find the same one that we used last week, which is kind of cool.
That's great. So it's random that
we're using a random randomizer.
Random. Do I put my finger on the screen
where it says randomize? Just hit randomize.
Oh, okay.
But where it says step 2.
Shit, I need glasses. That is the world's smallest screen.
Just hit randomize.
Here we go. I found it. I'm trying to paint a picture for our listeners.
Oh, it's so small.
Of on this Google phone, on the bottom left corner, this is about the size of half of my fingernail to try and find the one that says hit randomize. Here we go.
It's smaller than them kids that got shrunk.
Honey. I hit randomize. And now I don't know how it shows who won, so I'm going to hand it back to you. It is
Lord Marcus number 1. See right there it says 1.
Oh, 2. Okay. But there were 2 items in your list.
Yeah, Lord
Here
Marcus
they are in a random order. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Hit backwards.
Well, it would be again. Go back. But yeah, It doesn't matter.
It's
just a different version of
That's the joke. It's trusting that the randomizer app is being random and that I actually hit randomize, because if I just looked at the screen and
just
handed
keep going
the phone
until
back,
it says, just keep going until it says me. Then it will be random.
this is what, but also you now have the option to defer the first pick, right?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
You're welcome.
To get an extra pick.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've decided, ladies and gentlemen, outside of the 7 categories, which we will read them: drama, action, thriller, sci-fi, horror, fantasy, box office darling, award darling, comedy, animated, or international. And then we end with wild card. So seven categories. If you choose, when you get the first pick, to not choose the first pick, we have decided that you can defer it for an extra wild card. So you get kind of 8 picks, and that 8th pick can be whatever you want it to be.
But now that we're doing 2 rounds, does that mean 2 extra wild card picks, or
No,
just one?
Just one.
Okay. I tell you what, I'm going to do the first ever defer, and I am going to allow Mr. B to go first so that I can get an extra wild card pick.
Interesting.
Which I'll take at the end of round 1.
Well, you don't have to tell me when you're going to take it, nor the pod.
But I'll take it at the end of round 1 just so that it's clear.
Yeah, okay.
I've forgotten.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. So to open this pre-1988, all films before the year 1988, with the first pick, Team Mr. B is going to choose a drama, and the film is Citizen Kane.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So famous Orson Welles film. I've also only kind of came to this recently, probably just this year, mainly because I hadn't watched a lot of any Orson Welles films, and it was time to dip my toes in, but not even dip my toes in, but jump into the deep end and get a bunch under my belt. And we had a lot of other fellow movie lovers and podcasters continually reference this film over and over again, continually reference it. So I had to watch it.
Well,
I watched it.
It's widely considered to be one of the best films of all time, and I believe that especially the British Film Institute had voted it #1 movie of all time for decades and decades and decades in a row. It rightfully is as well celebrated.
Yeah.
I also came to this movie late in life, so you've hit it much earlier in your film viewing existence than I have, because I just watched it for the first time in 2023.
Really? I didn't know that was the first time.
Yeah, totally first time watch for me, and also first time with a real watching a full Orson Welles feature, and I loved it. I just can't believe that it was just so eerily prescient of what was going to be going on in the 21st century. And it had sort of this mandatory WTF scene sort of stuck in the middle of it. I couldn't say enough about it. Good pick. I'm a little surprised that's where you went, but pleasantly surprised. Awesome.
Well, we've kind of talked about it in the past on pods, specifically for drafts. I have to go with, when I'm drafting, my view is, what do I want to watch for the rest of time, the rest of my life? And that's how I choose by draft. So there are so many movies that I love pre-1988, but if I'm stuck on a desert island and I can only ever watch a handful of movies, that's how I vote with my drafting, especially on the pod, is, what is something I could watch over and over again and get something out of?
Awesome.
Written, directed, and produced by Orson Welles, famously. If you've never watched it, don't be like us and watch it later in life. Hopefully we've got younger listeners who are film appreciators.
And
film enthusiasts.
Pair it with the new David Fincher film, not brand new, but the newer David Fincher film, Mank, which is about the making of Citizen Kane.
That's great.
It's a really good companion piece.
Yeah, a good reference point for people to dip their toes in. So even watch that first before Citizen Kane. But now I'm very interested, Lord Marcus, with where you're going to go, because we talked about this draft a lot beforehand. And the main draft revolved around a original trilogy a famous sci-fi trilogy.
I will also not be dipping my toes in that pool at the moment, because here's the one thing that I want to sort of establish. It's sort of an unpublished draft that we've had, but I've expressed that I'm a huge David Lynch fan, super huge David Lynch fan. He's my GOAT, and there's not even anybody for me that's even a close second. But
there's really a pod that we are not aware of this, your love for him.
Yeah. So, but if there was a second place to be had that was in close contention, one of the directors that would be at number 2, and I've not had the opportunity to draft any of his films because we have not done any of the years.
Okay.
But Mr. Terry Gilliam.
Oh, nice.
And in this case, what I want to do is a movie that he co-directed.
Okay.
With Terry Jones.
Yeah.
And it's a comedy. Monty Python and the Holy Grail will be my number 1 pick in comedy for the Film Dogs pre-1988 draft.
Amazing. Yeah, man.
So let me just
Classic.
Let me just tell you that this is, if you want to know, and you're listening to our pods ever, and we're talking about comedies or Mr. B's making jokes, and I'm not laughing. Like, I'm super hard to please when it comes. Like, things just don't make me laugh. But Monty Python makes me laugh. I love this British dry humor, this absurd sense of humor that they have, particularly on this low budget. And how do you creatively solve the fact that you don't have horses, the budget for horses? Well, you just get a couple of coconuts and sort of go trotting about the land. And just everything was just filmed with this ingenuity and this style of British humor that is just overwhelmingly, requotably funny. For me, it's just one of my top 3 favorite comedies of all time.
Top 3.
I wanted to show some light on my boy Terry.
Yeah.
Because I've not had the opportunity to draft anything by him yet. Yeah. Like, I can't say enough about it. Like, it's a cult classic. It follows the adventures of King Arthur. but not any kind of traditional sense. And his merry men.
His merry knights.
Yeah, just this. It's very absurd. It's just funny as heck, and not to be taken like super seriously. It's so low budget, but that's my thing. I can't say enough about it. Monty Python, Holy Grail, my number 1 pick.
That's interesting. You've left it kind of wide open where we go from here. To almost think you did that on purpose goes, do I draft Star Wars next? Or do I keep going with weird, you know? What if Star Wars doesn't get drafted in the first round?
What if it doesn't get drafted in the second round? Who knows?
Who are we?
Because we're big Star Wars fans.
But also we are still trapped by categories, so we do still have to fill like awards darlings and box office darlings. So 2 rounds. I can't just choose any movie from the pre-1988. There's a few ways I can vote with my pick. I can vote for something that I'm worried I won't get if I don't take it. Or I could vote strictly by heart, like I said, desert island films, where if I need to have this movie for the rest of my life, and if I was trapped on an island, and this is the draft of 14 films, I can only ever watch these 14 films. These are what they are.
I've got at least one. I have 1 or 2 mean picks.
Yeah, okay.
That I'm going to make for dramatic effect.
Okay.
They're going to be mean as shit because they're movies I don't even like.
You're telling me you want to do it for trading or something?
Nah, just to make you upset.
Really? You would do that?
Yeah.
Well, okay. I
might wait till like round 3 or 4. I might do pick 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, dude. I'm not gonna. How many times have I gone off brand just to screw you over? Never. Not that I wouldn't. I took the lobster because I love the lobster. It's just how much do I love? How much do we love some of the same pool of films? I don't think you've got much to worry about. I'm not really gunning for your childhood at all. And I had the opportunity on my birthday episode to talk about some films that are important to me. I don't need to draft them necessarily. Just saying.
Well, in sci-fi horror fantasy, I'm going to draft Blade Runner. Did you guess I would?
No, I really regret taking my number 1 pick because that was my number 2 pick.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes. That's amazing. That means I've met you on the battlefield.
Indeed you have.
We have
Indeed
matched.
You have.
We have matched. And I chose this kind of on purpose because there are basically almost 3 Star Wars films we could choose from if we wanted to go for Star Wars in the pre-88 draft. So I know I'm going to get one, but what are ones I'm worried I will not get that I love and that I love for art's sake? And that is Ridley Scott's 1982 amazing sci-fi Blade Runner starring Harrison Ford mainly. And that was
Rutger Hauer. Come on, man.
Okay,
Daryl
okay.
Hannah,
That's
Sean
what
Young.
I mean. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Dude, you don't want to get into a battle about who knows more about Blade Runner. I'll fucking kill you.
I know. And that's why I had to have it over you.
Jesus.
Yeah. Filmed in between Empire Strikes Back and A New Hope, Harrison Ford, rising star. And this is what he chooses to do.
Do you prefer the narrated
I
version or the unnarrated version?
That's a great question.
I would bet that you've not seen both.
Lord Marcus is upset. Like George Costanza. I'm getting upset. George is upset.
How many times have you seen Blade Runner?
Probably 5 times.
5 times you've seen Blade Runner.
Yeah, what about it?
Okay. Narrated version or the final cut?
I'm used to the narrated version.
Okay, the theatrical release.
Yeah, well, and the thing is
what service did you watch that on?
I think I bought it actually.
You bought the narrated version.
I'd have to open my Apple TV. Lord Marcus is so upset that he has to say he loves Blade Runner more than me that it can't be on my team.
Oh my God.
And with that, I'm not going to dignify any responses. I'm going to make you go to draft pick number 3 and just wave Blade Runner in your face. Because this is a Film Dogs, and this is for not just for your entertainment, but for mine and for Lord Marcus's, for our shared entertainment.
It'll be entertaining listening back to this.
It will be because I do the editing.
It'll be fun to listen to the raw version. All right, so with my next pick, I'm going with Awards, Darling, a film that's super important to me and has informed my musical taste of my entire life. And as far as period pieces go, and how probably my first introduction to some sort of film that's not necessarily in a linear fashion because it's told mostly in flashbacks. I'm going with 1984's Academy Award winner for Best Picture, Amadeus, directed by Milos Forman, starring Tom Hulce, F. Murray Abraham, who won Best Actor for the year. I can't say enough about this film. It's about it follows the life of Mozart, but the main character is Antonio Salieri, who is accused of maybe having murdered Mozart, and it was based on a play that took over from centuries of folklore about what may have happened. But in reality, these guys were they were colleagues and friends, and there's not much truth to it. But it made for a very dramatic movie. And the person that selected which Mozart pieces were to be featured in this film was just so spot on and perfect. There is a lot of opera singing in it, but I think when you can look at and examine, because I know that's just not the most popular way to consume movies these days, because opera is not very popular, but it's in service to the story, and the acting's incredible, and the costumes are incredible, and the music's incredible, and it's a great introduction to music that has demanded to be alive for centuries, and it won't disappear. And prior to it existing, it demanded to be heard, and it had to come out in the form of someone that was gifted and a prodigy and had this natural talent given by God. And this is also, I would say, for anybody that a spiritual nature, it tackles a lot of spiritual issues, and maybe not in the most obvious of ways, but Salieri is very jealous of God and has started his own private war and is setting out to destroy who he perceives as God's instrument to deliver his musical message, which is Mozart, and the animosity between them. It is full of tension. It is full of great music. It's full of some of the best acting you'll ever see anywhere, ever. I think it's the best period piece that's ever been made. The costumes are just so believable. The set pieces are so unbelievably good. The cinematography is good. Can't say enough about it. I saw this at the ripe old age of 10 years old, and it has influenced me so much. And I still love classical music to this day. And because of this movie, I still love the music that I love 40 years later, and I can't say enough about it. Boom. That's that'll be my second pick in awards, darling.
Do I pick Star Wars? Do I pick it, or do I wait? Are there other films I worried I won't get? Stay tuned to the Film Dogs to find out. Just kidding. With my third pick, I am going to choose in the category. Damn it. Oh, man. The choice. I'm paralyzed.
Why?
Because there's so many good movies.
There's hundreds of good movies.
There's so many good movies.
You're going to get a bunch of good ones.
There's too much passion.
Even though you just threw a right hook totally unprovoked, it didn't hurt me. It stung. Okay, good. But it didn't drop me to my knees. I'm not coming at you full rage.
I'm going to go with box office darling, and I'm going to choose Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. We've kind of talked about how the draft would go. Like, who gets, if one picks one, who's going to pick the other, and who loves what. And you've talked about in the past when you came to Star Wars and seeing it in cinemas as well, and being young and loving it. And I remember seeing it on VHS tape for the first time, pre special editions, and it changing my life as well. But the older I get, the more when I go to rewatch them, what ones do I go to rewatch and which ones influence me? And I'm not sure if I've said it on the pod before, but I grew up probably preteen loving Luke Skywalker as a character. And then in my maybe late teens or in adulthood, I've really, I obsessed over Han Solo instead. I just found Luke to be annoying and babyish and whiny. And I liked Harrison Ford's portrayal as the chill badass, chasing the lady, gambler, cheater. But I can identify with that in his comedy more. And Empire Strikes Back is where everything is cooking. And it's really cooking, and things are in suspense and suspended. We don't know what's going to happen. We get the greatest twist in movie history, arguably, when Luke Skywalker not only loses his hand in a lightsaber duel with Darth Vader, but in that same duel, he finds out that Darth Vader is indeed his father. And the good guys don't win. We've talked about it. So, I think you really mentioned that A New Hope was a very, and probably the most influential film from Star Wars in your life. So I kind of saved that one for you if that's what you wanted to choose, and if you're going to choose it in this draft. But yeah, I decided to take Star Wars off my list for now, at least.
Right on. Good pick. Love Empire Strikes Back. First movie that I ever had to wait in line for. First sequel I ever saw.
How big was the line?
Well, at the time, the theater was the Salisbury Mall, the original Salisbury Mall cinema in the Blue Theater. And it probably only fit 150, 200 people. So the line was not longer than 150 people, but it probably was 150 people long. I'm pretty sure the place was packed out. I think it was also the first time I'd been in a sold out movie.
How old were you?
Well, I'd been 7 or 8.
Yeah, okay. Did you go? What your parents took you?
Oh yeah, like it was a big family event. Of friends of the family. There was like a group of a pack of like 20 of us went.
Nice.
Yeah, like what happened to those days where you went to the movie with like 20 people?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, it depends on how many friends you had, or if your family lived close to you.
Yeah, I guess. All right. Excellent pick. I love Empire Strikes Back. All right. So I am going to next take another personable film that has spoken to me and very influential about my entire life. I was formerly in the United States Marine Corps, and
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi, thank you. I wanted to pick a film that I think is the most accurate representation of what life in the Marine Corps was like. Full Metal Jacket by Stanley Kubrick from 1987. I'm going to take that in Box Office Darling.
Okay.
Now, I would say for newer people that are listening to the podcast and have only been watching films for 20, 30 years and haven't really tackled films from the 80s, if you like the movie Whiplash, you will love Full Metal Jacket.
Fair enough.
Because the characters that are inflicting the most psychological damage are exactly the same. It just is. This is what it is, so realistic. Now, it follows the tale of Private Joker, played by Matthew Modine, from his journey in boot camp until he has some battles in the midst of the Vietnam War. And it's got Vincent D'Onofrio, Matthew Modine, Arlie Gurney. It's Stanley Kubrick at his absolute best and his absolute finest. I can't say enough about it. I'm sorry, I'm a little shell shocked still about losing Blade Runner.
Gotcha, bitch. The famous words of Dave Chappelle.
I'm trying to get my inflation back up and let my balloon rise. I don't want it to subtract from my appreciation of Full Metal Jacket, which, look, if you want to know what life in the military was like, watch Full Metal Jacket. By far, there is nothing else that you could watch in modern times that will give you an example of what the possibility of what it might feel like to be serving in the military, definitely like in the United States Marine Corps. Because I'm telling you, Top Gun Maverick is not realistic. Jarhead is not realistic. Full Metal Jacket is realistic. It's so good and so well acted.
That's a great comparison. So you liked it more than Jarhead. What about Black Hawk Down?
I think Black Hawk Down was absolutely, that was a little less Marine Corps. I think that was like Army Rangers maybe.
Yeah.
I think there was, and maybe some Navy SEALs and Special Forces. I think that was sort of a mixture of things. I thought that Black Hawk Down was incredibly realistic. What I did not find Black Hawk Down to be was quite as entertaining in the Kubrick way, because Full Metal Jacket, as being a very serious war drama, was incredibly funny. Just the absurdity of how this person has taken over your life and you have to do everything he says. And he's so cruel and mean about it. The way that Fletcher was in Whiplash. Like, there's just something about that for me that it is actually lighthearted and be like, oh, you think that's funny? You must be sadistic. Well, label me sadistic because I thought it was funny. That was what life was like in the Marine Corps. And sometimes it was hard not to laugh when somebody else was getting their ass chewed out. But sure enough, it wouldn't take long before you were the next one in line to receive the same thing. And you didn't like it when people were laughing at you. So I think in a way it kind of preaches camaraderie. But my first opportunity to draft a Kubrick film, and I want to jump on that one real quick before. I know that you've seen it. I know that you liked it. I know you're a war guy. Like, wow, but nothing's safe and nothing's sacred. I got to get my ones that are part of my not only my film identity but my life identity. So classical music and the United States Marine Corps wouldn't have felt right at all.
Fair enough.
Being on somebody else's team. So Full Metal Jacket, Stanley Kubrick.
Great pick. I'll be honest, it didn't make my draft.
Right on. I didn't think that
it was on. Like, am I aware of it and of it being pre-88 and what categories I would fit it in?
I wanted to get it out of the way, just so I was like, If I wait till like round 5 or 6, he might watch it, and his elevated.
Yeah.
You might go into a Kubrick phase. I don't know. I was like, I need it on my team.
I like it.
I'm the Marine. You're not.
There's certain vibes and eras of war movies that I like, or subjects, because there's kind of like is it a World War II movie? Is it a World War I movie? Is it a Vietnam War movie? Is it Civil War? Is it British? Like there's all these different kinds. And I'd like that movie. It is a great film. It's pretty wild. I watched it quite young from memory as well. Yeah, but there's so many other movies that I loved and respected, and I'm glad that it's on a team that will love it more than I will.
Okay.
I'm going to go with because I'm kind of been looking at my list, and I feel like there are so many movies out there. I actually don't know if we're that big in contention for at least maybe even the first round. I think it's when we really get to the second round where we're going to be fighting for movies. Because I think there's so many other influential movies that we both love and respect that we will choose them first. And there's other movies that we know the other have watched and maybe like or are aware of, but really don't either care about, or B, don't really need it on our draft, whether it's a good movie or not. So in comedy, I'm going to choose a film, and it stars Marilyn Monroe, and it's Some Like It Hot, which is directed by Billy Wilder. I haven't really watched Marilyn Monroe movies either. I'm honest. I waited. I put it on. I knew we were going to be doing the 88 draft, pre-88, and
you're a dirty little sly bastard. You didn't log it.
I didn't?
No.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Probably because maybe I had to wait and wonder.
Right. Yeah, because I just watched this like a fortnight ago for the first time.
Well, the biggie for me was
Marilyn Monroe. Oh my goodness.
Well, you were trying to sell it to me on that. And
Jack Lemmon.
Yeah, but then I stayed for the story. It is hilarious. It is one of the funniest movies that I've seen that are like older films with a script before the talkies. That isn't entirely kooky. Like did you watch much of the Three Stooges growing up? That was the thing in my family for the boys. And I'm also a fan of Laurel and Hardy, that sort of stuff. And those are all great. But for a 120-minute film, I love the story. I love the story arc of there being musicians and then they're on the run. Marilyn Monroe doesn't come in maybe, at least 15, 20 minutes into the film, it feels like. It's hilarious. And I love the topic of them dressing up as women.
Do you know that it was actually, there was a board that was sort of the censorship board that this movie was submitted to because they didn't want it to be released because men dressing as women in 1958 and 59 was not tolerated. And so sort of as one of the first, films to, one of the first popular films to feature men dressed as women, I think it is a landmark film. And I thought I love Jack Lemmon. Jack Lemmon was absolutely fantastic in this. I can't say enough about. I have never really known what was. Obviously, you could see a picture of Marilyn Monroe and say, "Oh yeah, that's a pretty face and that's a pretty body." But like largely, it's been a mystery to me why or how people accessed her. This film gave me all that I needed to know. And this is not to disrespect her as a person or who she was as a person, but her presence on the screen was just so magnificent. Like, I would say for me, like the most beautiful woman that's ever been on the silver screen. There's something different about the way that her magnetism, and maybe it had something to do with her character being a little ditzy, but not really. She wasn't ditzy, but kind of what maybe became the stereotype of a Marilyn Monroe, very beautiful blonde woman. I thought the ending was fantastic. It didn't go in any kind of direction that I really thought that it would. Good pick. I really like that a lot. Boom.
Yeah. Was it on your draft at all?
Nope.
Okay.
Not for the first 2 rounds.
Nice. Do you know what's up next for you?
I do.
Off the bat?
Yep. All right.
Nice.
I'm going with action thriller.
Okay.
Now, right now, my draft strategy is I'm trying to mix some things that have been long-term in my life, really important to me.
Yeah.
And some things where I feel my taste has really evolved, particularly in the past year. So I'm going to sort of dance around between films that I've loved for my entire life and films that my mature self has very recently come to love. But for now, I'm going to go with one from my childhood that has been important to me my entire life. And that will be the sequel to Mad Max, The Road Warrior.
Nice. I wondered if anybody was going to take it or take any of them.
It was my first introduction to Mel Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
My first introduction to the Mad Max franchise.
Yeah.
I came to it through Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel. They both gave it 2 thumbs up, I believe, by memory.
What was your age range when you watched it?
I'd have been 8.
Wait.
8-ish, 9-ish.
Wait. Lord Marcus, you were aware of the Eberts at the age of 8? And that's how you chose movies?
Along with my father, yes.
I feel like that's breaking news on the pod. That's
okay.
Great. That's a great story.
But yeah, so Ebert and Siskel had their little half-hour show, and they would, review 4 or 5 movies on each episode, and sort of based on what they said, that was really our only access to sort of public opinion, because our local newspaper didn't really. It would have been kind of like modern. Exactly what we're trying not to do is they would focus on movie of the week, and your newspaper articles are trying to sell. And they're trying to get people into the theater, and it was it wasn't pre-VHS, but it was kind of in that zone where VHS was just coming out.
Yeah.
But me and my dad saw this in the theater together, and immediately, as a boy of 8 years old, like daggone, everything that was going on in that film was like brand new to me. Like it was just this big rush and this big energy charge. And can you just imagine? Can you remember the first time you saw Mel Gibson? My very first Mel Gibson was on screen, The Road Warrior, in the movie theater, the World Cinema, which is sort of our B-level movie, which was how this movie was received initially in the United States. But it was such a good movie. The score was so fantastic. This was like a low-budget desert Australian action adventure about dystopian post-nuclear apocalypse, but it was scored like Star Wars. And they wouldn't have had to have any dialogue, and this movie would have been fantastic with just the score and the action scenes. And obviously, like, really did quite a bit to launch Mel Gibson in the United States, and he became one of the biggest, movie stars of all time. And I think this was the springboard that got him there. But for me, I just have these wonderful childhood memories of going to see this in the movie with Dad, and we owned it on VHS, and I'm pretty sure we owned it on DVD.
Okay,
and we could rewatch it today and still love it as much as we ever did. I think you and I watched it together too.
Yeah.
The Road Warrior by George Miller, which has been continued. I got to get some of the good things out of the Mad Max franchise, since you've got Fury Road and Furiosa.
That's true. Fair enough. You finally have a Mad Max on your roster.
So I'll take the classic version with Mel Gibson.
That's great. Another one I'm going to say ended up not making this round of my draft. I am going to jump to action thriller, and I'm going to take Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Boom. That was almost. I almost went there because of
really
just because of Blade Runner.
Okay. Was it because of Blade Runner? Was it because of Harrison Ford? Was it because of?
It was because I know that it was on your list, and I wanted to hurt you the way that you hurt me. It was very immature. So I went with myself.
I have 2 other options in its spot that are pretty good.
Yeah.
But I went with next pick going. I wouldn't know if you would pick it or not without me. But it's another. It's another
there
series.
At round 5 or 6, I would have taken it. It was very important, dude. I can't say enough about Raiders of the Lost Ark. By far my favorite Indiana Jones. Probably by far my favorite Steven Spielberg. one of for the genre, probably one of my favorite movies of the genre. I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. Another film I saw in the theater multiple times because it was a summer movie theater. My mom worked at the insurance agency across from our movie theater. I guarantee you, I was in the theater 2 or 3 times a week seeing this for the entire summer. I've seen it multiple times as a child, and it has aged so well. Good pick.
Oh yeah.
With that said, like it doesn't feel as important to me now, but I would say that's more because of like what happened with the Matrix when they did the Matrix 2 and 3, and they just sort of watered down the original. And I kind of felt the same way, even though I did kind of like The Last Crusade, but I didn't really like Temple of Doom. I didn't, and I've not seen the newest one. I don't care to. I got bored with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and just turned it off. So, but Raiders, the high mark of that franchise, and definitely a high mark in Harrison Ford's career. Oh, you're going for the Harrison Ford draft here.
Isn't it interesting though? Because I've already taken a view.
Well, I guess it's a good thing The Fugitive is not until the 90s.
That's a great film.
It is a great film. All right, so Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, and I took it this soon because I worried that you might take it either because you wanted it or out of spite.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was. It was lined up in my crosshairs out of spite, but I'm trying not to go there.
Oh, you're allowed. Keep it interesting.
Oh well, thanks for the permission. Thanks for your permission to rage.
I mean, not that you would ever need my permission for anything, because Mord Larkus does what he wants. Voldemort.
All right, I'm going to go back to my boy Terry Gilliam.
TG.
He's my man. And I'm not going for spite picks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going for films that make... I am above. I'm going the high road. I don't need Blade Runner. Of course I love Blade Runner. Oh my God. I think it's Harrison Ford's best movie of all time. I love... I can't say enough about how much I love Blade Runner. I might try to trade for it later. Anyway, but I'm going to stick with Terry Gilliam, and I'm going to go with his 1986 masterpiece, Brazil.
Okay.
Which is... not only a sci-fi, it's kind of this, like all of Terry Gilliam's pieces can have a little bit of absurdist humor into it.
Yeah,
but
he does it well.
This was the first film that really kind of showcased what he had as a vision of a director. He did have Time Bandits prior to this, but I think that was widely considered to be more of a children's movie, even though it really wasn't. It featured children, wasn't a children's movie. And so I think that he came up with sort of a more Orwellian adult concept, and basically it just follows the life of an ordinary man that works in a very oppressive society, and it's the Ministry of Information Gathering, the Ministry of Information Processing, and then the Ministry of Information Dispersal. And he works in one of those departments, and this is how the entire bureaucracy, it's a satire on how bureaucracy works. Yeah. It's very British. It stars Jonathan Pryce in the lead role. And newer people may know him from Game of Thrones, or he also played Don Quixote in The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, which is criminally underseen as well. Yeah. But he's been around for a while, and he was also in Pirates of the Caribbean. So I think people will look at him and be like, oh man, he was quite a handsome young man back in the 80s. And he was a super great actor. A brief appearance by Robert De Niro. Look, it is phenomenal. It is... I would recommend giving it a try for anyone that is just bored by regular cinematography. He's great at using wide-angle lenses, super close up to sort of distort the face in kind of a comical way. And he was, at the time, sort of a vanguard in tackling subjects that were just rare to cinema. And in this case, just having like everything with this satirical lens pointed onto it. So he could make fun of the government. He could make fun of America and Americans and what's important to people in modern capitalist society in a way that nobody had ever really experienced before. So it was really a film for people that love the underground.
Oh, yeah.
Terry Gilliam, Brazil from 1986.
Well, I've got to take a awards darling or a wild card. So I think I'm going to go with wild card. And I'm going to grab The Ruling Class.
Nice.
Yeah. Did you think this movie would get drafted?
I had a suspicion that it would, and I will tell you why I did not put it in my immediate 2-round draft board.
Okay.
Was because you suggested that we watched it. It was in my watch list through, I think, a Letterboxd list recommendation of some sort about fever dreams or something, and I loved it. This movie's on brand for me. But you're the reason that we watched it, and I wanted to pay you the respect.
Okay.
Of honoring that. I was like, if he doesn't want it, I'll take it. But you introduced it, like, essentially, you forced me into watching it. Not that you forced me into it.
Yeah.
But it was your suggestion that we watched it. And so I kind of feel that that's a little bit of almost hallowed ground. I wanted to respect your opportunity to draft it first because it was because of you that we accelerated the viewing of that. I did love that movie so much. Oh my goodness. Peter O'Toole. I swear that's one of the best acting performances ever of all time. I would draft it for that. The screenplay, I would draft it for that. Sort of the one-shot location, I would draft it for that. I can't say enough good things about this movie. My goodness, Electric Christ.
Oh my gosh. Directed by Peter Madek, starring Peter O'Toole, as you mentioned. I have this fascination with maybe the sacred and the profane. And I like British comedy a lot more than American comedy when it's pre-80s. I like the dry humor. It touches on some social conversations, but also a comedy, and touches on some subjects regarding religion as well, where I think I'm not offended by it. I think it's funny that he plays a guy who thinks he's Jesus Christ. And I love Jesus. I'm saying that on the pod. I think he's awesome.
The imagery,
I'm pro Jesus.
The imagery that accompanies his delusion.
Yeah.
He has a cross in the living room. Man, I good. This is probably my favorite pick. So
there's moments because
I
want to force people to watch it to the point where I don't want to talk about the film because I don't want to give stuff away.
It's worth,
but it does some shifting moments of going thriller or a horror.
It is soaked in that 70s vibe. So the way that it was shot with like the color choices, like there is no mistaking when you're watching this that it is from the 1970s. And that is a good thing. Like, it is a really good thing. It's not like watching the newest version of what's ever out on Netflix where everything is nice and clean and cinematographically perfect. You know what? Take this version. The cinematography is really good, but back then they just like the story was what really mattered and the acting was what really mattered, and it was unique and interesting in such a awesome way, electric way. Goodness, great pick. My pick of the draft for you so far.
Really?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Do you know what's next for you?
My first wild card pick. I'm going to go with a film that I've only seen pretty recently.
Okay.
It's a Polish film.
Oh, yeah.
Directed by, please forgive me if I murder the pronunciation.
Don't forgive him.
The public. Or crucify me. Either way.
Yeah, crucify him.
Wojciech Jerzy Has. So this film's from 1973, and it explores the character of Joseph visits a dilapidated sanatorium to see his father. Joseph undertakes a strange journey through the many rooms of the sanatorium, each which conjures worlds composed of his memories, dreams, and nightmares. Now, I've so far in this draft picked films from my childhood. This is from my adulthood, and it is the best film that I have seen in 2024. I love this film so much. I can't describe it. It abandons narrative, but there is a narrative.
Yeah.
It abandons logic and reason and ration. All of those things are there, but it just like it works almost like our subconscious. It just is about a man going to visit his father, and in the way that Beau is Afraid is sort of this dissertation on a boy with mommy issues.
Oh yeah,
this is more like a boy with daddy issues, and the memories of him growing up and what his father did to him and what their relationship was. While he's going through these different rooms and experiencing fragments of the story of his life and his relationship with his father, it's super weird. It's super like you don't know what's going on, because it does sort of abandon how we look at movies, where we need to be told we need the director to say, okay, this is the opening scene and we're going to have all of these characters and they're the characters that we're going to have for the rest of this movie, and everything is explained to you. Yeah. Not in this movie.
No.
You don't know if you're going to see these characters again. You don't even know if you're going to see the father again. You don't know what's going to happen. It is beautiful. It is dreamlike. The cinematography is beautiful and perfect.
Yes.
It is such a great movie. I would recommend anybody that can take a chance and doesn't feel that they are a Netflix addict where they need mom drama of the week. Mm-hmm. If you are an artist and you love the altar of the visual image, watch this movie. If you like thinking for yourself, watch this movie. It is so rewarding. It is so incredibly good. I just if Letterboxd gave me the option to have one 6-star movie at the moment, this would be my 6-star movie on Letterboxd. The Hourglass Sanatorium.
Nice. Leaves me with my final pick from the first round. And it has to be an awards darling, of all places. I'm going to take. I wonder if you think it's gonna. Could it possibly be this one? It's Top Gun.
Right on. Go.
Yeah.
Very fun pick. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. This is a great one to own if we were doing an 80s draft. But this is best films of pre-88. What are films I want to rewatch?
Hey man, that's
won a lot of money.
That's the 80s.
What's a lot of fun?
Goodness.
This is
Super
one to have.
Fun.
Yeah.
I saw this in the theater with my mom.
So it was like a mother-son date.
Yeah, my eyes got covered during the light sex scene that occurred.
Do you know what award it won for the Oscars? It got nominated
best
for
sound?
Original song. It did get nominated for
Kenny
sound.
Loggins.
Yeah, and it got nominated for best film editing and also best effects.
Are you familiar with the term continuity errors?
Yeah.
This movie. All right. So when I was in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Okay. Bring it.
I was an aviation ordnanceman. And so that means the people that make sure that there's missiles and bombs and they work correctly and that the guns on aircraft work correctly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You go back and watch Top Gun. It does not take away from the actual film itself, but you count how many missiles are on those planes when they take off. And after they've fired 3 or 4 of them, it's sort of like the planes that have the never-ending bag, the Santa's bag of missiles, Sidewinder missiles. Bag. Oh man, so your plane only carries 4 missiles, but you've shot down 8 planes. Oh my goodness, full of continuity errors, which I learned in boot camp. So anyway, great pick, super fun pick. Oh my goodness,
well, you needed some mainstream fun. It's not a street cred pick, but it's a fun pick.
Right on. Well, I have a drama and an extra wild card pick from deferring from the first round. So with my second wild card, I'm going to take 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Nice.
Another Kubrick masterpiece, and it's not my favorite of Kubrick, and it's not my favorite science fiction piece, but it is great. It's 5-star for sure, and it tackles a lot of things that I feel about the evolution of life and the evolving nature of our consciousness and how you mature. Now, I'd actually come to 2001 through its sequel, 2010.
Really?
Which what I had first seen was 2010, and it's criminally underappreciated. 2010. I loved it. a lot. I wanted it to be what I wanted mature films to be. And so I'd never seen 2001. And I was almost sort of like, it's like, well, it's the 70s and it's really long and you're not going to understand it. And the visual effects aren't that good. Well, I don't know what they were talking about. The visual effects were awesome. And my most recent rewatch of it, I can see how this has influenced so many great movies. Now, and in some ways, it's influenced people to want to say, here's my problems with 2001, and I want to do better than that. But how it influenced George Lucas when he was making Star Wars to make it a little bit more realistic, where everything was sort of grungy and not this sort of clean cut.
Yeah.
But what it didn't do was handhold you through the narrative. Like the ending of it, like nobody really knows exactly unless you've read the book. But if you just watch the movie, you don't know what's happening. There's no idea what's happening, and that's what, like, I love that so much. It makes you think. I love films that make you think. I think that for me that's my fun. That stimulates me to where, like, oh man, I just had the best time, like coming off of a roller coaster. Whereas, like, I don't know what's happening. 2001, especially by the end, like, what the heck's going on here? I have no idea. So that's what I'm going to go with for my second wild card, 2001, my second Kubrick of the pick.
Nice. Your second Kubrick. 2 Kubricks don't make a right, but 3 do.
Oh, I have my second drama. I won't be taking another Kubrick with my final pick. I'm going to be taking...
Closing out the second round of the pre-1988 film draft, Lord Marcus is taking a drama.
I'm going to take The Mirror.
Really?
By Andrei Tarkovsky.
Okay. Talk to us about it.
Now, it is very similar to my previous pick.
Okay.
My Hourglass Sanatorium pick. But it's more kind of in the line of Beau is Afraid. It's sort of more exploring the memories of a son-mother relationship. So a dying man in his 40s recalls his childhood, his mother, the war, and personal movements that tell of and juxtapose pivotal moments in Soviet history with daily life. Now, Andrei Tarkovsky is, like, for me, he is in contention for the number 2 director, just behind Mr. David Lynch and sort of neck and neck with Mr. Terry Gilliam. I've just started watching his movies in the past 2 years, and every single one of them for me so far has been 5-star. This one is much like the Hourglass Sanatorium, where it explores memory, and it shifts one scene to another. You don't know if it's still in modern times or if it's a memory. It's challenging. It really is quite challenging. But I remember of the time that we saw Tenet, we didn't know what was going on. There's plenty of times where we watch these movies, we don't know what's going on. And then, like, once you get to the end of the film and then you understand what's going on, it's like, oh man, I've just gone through a very profound experience. And watching Mirror, for me, you will not even believe the cinematography on this.
Nice.
There's things that seem technically impossible, particularly from 1975, because it's not visual graphics. It was just either coincidence or the right time of the day where some of these great things happen with wind. But it also explores the nature of what life was like in Russia, which is in the United States. That's never explored. Russians are always bad guys. They're always flying, like in Top Gun, they're flying MiGs and killing people. Like, the common people are always ignored. And that's something that I really want to sort of explore in my future, is the oppressed live worldwide. And I don't want to blame the people of a nation on the crimes of their government. And I wouldn't want people to do that and assign value to me based on what the stereotype is, based on what their media outlets are telling them to feel. And this just gives us sort of really brilliant insight to what I think Russian life would have been like. It's so beautiful. It's just one of the best shot films of all time. Tarkovsky is rightly considered to be one of the masters of the craft. I'm not sure you've seen any Tarkovsky, but
I haven't. They're on my watch list. You're going very far left of field on this draft.
I am.
Is there any recency bias you reckon being committed by either you or me?
Oh, well, maybe, but I'll say this. they are important to me right now.
Yeah.
And we're podcasting right now. I want to talk about the moment. I don't want to, I think that I've indulged a bit in my childhood in the past. So, you know, I've taken 6 films that I've loved for my entire life. And now I want to start exploring some that I've seen recently. But this one, like, if in the next year, because it's on your watch list, you saw it, you'd be like, oh my goodness, that's actually right up my alley. I had the chance to get it. No, sorry. No mirror for you.
No mirror for me.
No Tarkovsky for you. So that'll close out round 1.
Round 1 is closed. Let's do just a brief recap before we jump to round 2. So in drama, I took Citizen Kane. In action thriller, I took Raiders of the Lost Ark. Sci-fi horror fantasy, I took Blade Runner. Box office darling, I took Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. In awards darling, I took Top Gun. Comedy animated international, I took Some Like It Hot. And in my wild card, I took The Ruling Class. Lord Marcus, what were your 7? Well, actually, you're 8 with your extra wild card.
Yeah, so in comedy, I took Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Great pick.
And the awards darling, I took Amadeus.
Another one.
And box office darling, I took Full Metal Jacket by Stanley Kubrick. And action thriller, I took Road Warrior by George Miller. In sci-fi, I took Brazil by Terry Gilliam. And my first wild card, I took The Hourglass Sanatorium by a gentleman that I won't embarrass myself by trying to pronounce his name, Mr. Haas. And my second wild card, I took 2001, A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick. And with my final pick in the first round, Mirror by Andrei Tarkovsky.
Nice.
And drama.
Psst. Mr. B here. Thanks for listening to the first round of the Pre-1988 film draft. Stay tuned in our following episodes for round 2. You can follow along on our film journeys on Instagram as The Film Dogs, or you can find us on our Facebook page as Film Dogs. We're also on Letterboxd as Mr. B or Brenton Blurry and Lord Marcus, Mark Robinson. Thanks for listening. And remember, life's too short for bad cinema.